Hi guys, good morning. So I decided for a little project I would make a sourdough starter. So essentially what that means is I can create something that will leaven bread without using yeast or baking soda or baking powder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a flour and water mixture, and then I'm going to allow it to ferment on its own in a container. I'm going to use this jar here, and we're going to feed it over about 2 weeks, and then I'll be able to use it to make sourdough bread. So I hope that you enjoy getting to see how that's made. I posted the recipe on Google Classroom, so if you want to try it along with me, you can do that. And if you have any questions, by all means, post those on Google Classroom and I can answer them. And I think this will be really cool. We'll get to make something, and we'll see how science and baking are really so linked. Baking is science. So let's give it a try. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we're going to mix together all-purpose flour and whole wheat flour. The recipe suggests the reason for this is the whole wheat flour adds a little bit more nutrition for the yeast that's in the air and the bacteria that's going to grow inside of this starter. It's going to help to give it a little bit more nutrition. So what we're going to do is we're going to put together the flour mixture that we're going to use to feed the starter first, and then we're going to make the actual starter. So we need to measure out 4.5 cups of whole wheat flour. So what I'm going to do is the scoop and scrape method. So I have my container of flour here. And I'm just going to measure out 4.5 cups of flour. And just like I do with you guys in class, I'm going to scoop and scrape. That's 1 cup. I'm going to measure out the rest of that and we'll keep on going. Okay, so I'm just going to measure out my last half cup of whole wheat flour. And I'll add this to my bowl. And then I'm going to switch over to all-purpose flour. And for our recipe, what it's calling for is 5 cups of all-purpose flour. So we'll do the same thing. And actually, I can use my half cup to make it a little quicker since this is a bigger container. Alright, so there's 1. We measure out the rest of it, and then we'll keep on going. All right, so there's number 5. All right, so that's all in my bowl now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to whisk all of this together. So just like we've done in a lot of our quick bread recipes, or anytime we're mixing some dry ingredients together, we want to mix them together in order to distribute the ingredients evenly. Here it's not so much about adding volume, although it is nice that we're going to sift out these, sift the flours while we're whisking them. But we really want to evenly distribute the all-purpose flour and the whole wheat flour. Okay. So we'll get that all mixed together. And then, a little pop there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use this mixture in order to create our starter. So we will measure directly from here and put it in the container that we're going to keep our starter in. So again, a starter is essentially creating your own leavening agent, basically from nothing. There's lots of yeast and bacteria in the air. They exist all around us. They're good for us, and they allow us to, we can actually utilize them in order to leaven bread, which is really cool. San Francisco is really well known for its sourdough bread. Starters are used, sourdough starters are generally used to make sourdoughs. What happens is they have a lot more flavor, they have a lot more complexity to them. They have a really chewy texture, so if you've ever had sourdough bread, you'll notice the texture is a little bit different too. Very crisp crust, really chewy interior, nice whole structure on the inside. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's take a look at our recipe, and it says we are going to use, using a wooden spoon, mix 1 cup of the flour mixture and 2/3 of a cup of room temperature water in a glass bowl until no dry flour remains. We want to reserve the remaining flour mixture. Cover with plastic wrap and let sit at room temperature until bubbly and fragrant for approximately 48 to 72 hours. So we're going to keep on checking on this. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to take, I have this really cool jar here. It's a glass jar. We're going to take and we're going to measure out a cup of the flour mixture that we have here. Okay. And we're going to add this to our jar. So I'm just going to take it from here. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more neat and make sure I get all of it in here. It's not exactly going to fit in. There we go. That's better. Let's see. Okay, so we'll get this into our jar. And then I've already measured out my 2/3 of a cup of water. So I'll show you that too. And then I'll get a wooden spoon. I'm kind of curious as to why they're asking me to use a wooden spoon. There is some science behind good bacteria that lives in wood. It's one of the reasons that it is okay to use a wooden cutting board for things. You'll notice I'm working on a wooden cutting board here. If you talk to Mr. Lakasha, our tech teacher, he will tell you for sure wood is has been shown to be actually safer than some of the plastic cutting boards that we use. I always err on the side of caution and use a plastic cutting board when I'm working with raw meats or seafoods, but for just general everyday, using a wooden cutting board is perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my wooden spoon and then I'm going to add in my water and mix it all together. All right, so here we go. Let's add in our water. We're going to mix this up. And so it says until no dry flour remains. So that's what we're going to do. I want to make sure we get down in the corners here. Mix it all together. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of like pulling away from the sides to make sure I get all the flour in there. What the cool part about the glass jar is I can lift this up and see whether or not I have any dry flour remaining in the bottom. And we really just want to get that all mixed in. So whole wheat flour has a very distinct smell. It's a lot earthier than regular all-purpose flour is. If you think about it, whole wheat flour comes from the same grains, the same wheat that regular flour does. But what they do is they leave the outside of the kernel of wheat on the actual, when they're grinding it up, whereas all-purpose flour has that removed. All right. Make sure I get all of that off of there. Put this over here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and plastic wrap over the top of it, and then I will and then I have a nice little like band because it's technically a ball jar. You can can your own stuff with this kind of jar. So that's all ready to go. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to keep on checking on it today, and I'm also going to check on it tomorrow, and we're going to start to see, hopefully, that we have some bubbles and some fragrance starting to come out of it. And then we'll start to feed it over the next 2 weeks. All right, thanks for joining me, guys. I think this is going to be a fun project for us to try. And at the end, we get a really nice loaf of bread, hopefully. Okay? Bye. Bye.